Hello and welcome everybody. Today we are discussing what I consider to be 5 of the coldest lines in anime. Now before I get into our list, I do want to preface that this is my opinion. These are all of my favorite cold lines of anime, and you might be asking yourself, what is a cold line of anime? And to that I would reply, well, it is a badass scene where somebody does something that is incredibly badass, or simply just says something that is incredibly intimidating, or just something that gives you chills just hearing it come out of their mouth. And so, without further ado, let's get into the first one. So the first one comes from an anime known as Seven Deadly Sins. Now, this is a very popular anime, and the character that I'm going to discuss his quote of is somebody who kind of has a ton of cold lines in this anime and in anime in general. It's my favorite character from the show. It is Escanor, the Lion Cid of Pride. Now, Escanor has, as I mentioned before, way too many lines to really consider. But I am going to talk about my favorite one that he has, and it comes from his fight against Estarossa, one of the 10 Commandments. Now, in his fight, there is a moment towards the end of the fight where Estarossa is kind of flexing on Escanor in a way where he has this ability called Full Counter, where he can fully counter all of Escanor's physical attacks with double the power. So Escanor is kind of getting fucked up by his own strength in that regard. But also, Escanor uses sun attacks, and Estarossa has darkness attacks. Now, his darkness attacks actually are somewhat capable of canceling out some of his sun attacks. And so Estarossa is standing there bragging at Escanor, being like, oh, well, all of my darkness attacks are going to block out your sun, and if you try to hit me with a physical attack, I'll just full counter it. So this fight is basically over, Escanor. I've won. And to that, Escanor replies with, oh, my attacks have no effect on you? Who decided that? Your darkness swallows up my sun? Who decided that? I will be the one to decide. And then he follows all of that pride up and all of that flexing with basically swiftly defeating Estarossa and like almost instantly killing him with his next attack. So not only does Escanor deliver one of the coldest lines in the entire anime, he also backs all of that shit up with some of the hardest attacks that you have ever seen in that show as well. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, and this one's kind of one that I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about. The reason for that is because it kind of feels like a Fight Club moment.
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
This is from One Piece. And we're talking about my boy Zoro, my favorite character from One Piece. And ironically, yeah, a lot of these characters are going to be my favorite characters from their respective shows. I am biased, I'll admit it. But I don't think anyone can deny that this is one of the coldest lines in anime, period, and definitely one of the coldest lines that Zoro ever has in the show. And it comes from the Thriller Bark arc, and if you've seen the show or read the manga, you already know where I'm going with this. Yes, this is the Nothing Happened scene. So let me give some context for people who have not seen this or heard about this yet. So basically, at the end of the Thriller Bark arc, they were fighting this 7 Warlord of the Sea, one of these super strong enemies within the world of One Piece, and his name was Gecko Moria. Now, Luffy and pals, the whole crew, they ended up coming out victorious just barely, and they're all fatigued and exhausted and like riddled with wounds. And then, guess what? Another 7 Warlord of the Sea shows up, this one being Bartholomew Kumo, who's arguably much stronger than Gecko Moria. And Bartholomew Kumo basically says, it would be a shame for me to kill Luffy here, so he decides, I'll work out a deal with you, Zoro. If you can take all of the pain and fatigue that Luffy has undergone through his time here on Thriller Bark, then I will leave in peace and won't mess with any of the crew or anybody else here. So Zoro is like, you have a deal. So before that, explains to him, like, it will likely kill you, right? Because he's already fatigued and covered with wounds and is suffering from a lot of pain. So if he takes on all of Luffy's stuff, he's more than likely going to just straight up die. And so Zoro is like, all right, I'll do it, but can we take it somewhere else? Kind of somewhat implying that he doesn't want to die in front of his crew. So they take it somewhere else, and the scene kind of cuts to like a little bit in the future, and everyone's kind of waking up. Luffy's like completely feeling great because obviously all of his pain and fatigue was pushed out of him by Kumo. And Sanji wakes up and he's confused because the last thing he remembers is him and Zoro standing in front of Bartholomew Kumo. And so he's like, where is that guy? Like, there's no way that he let us live like this. So he's like, what did Zoro do? So he goes off and tries to find Zoro, and he finally finds him just covered in blood. And a giant pool of blood is surrounding him. And Sanji is like, holy shit. Like, dude, are you alive? Like, what did he do? Where's Kumo? Like, what happened here? To which Zoro simply replies with, nothing happened. Which is insanely cold, because this guy who probably should have straight up died, just tanked all of this pain instantly. Like, he dove into that bubble of pain. He didn't question it a bit, and he took all of the pain and suffering that Luffy was feeling, was totally down to do that to save his crew, and he didn't even need a bit of credit. He didn't want any praise, he didn't want any credit, he didn't want any glory. He was like, I'm happy to do this shit for my crew, and it just gives you goosebumps when you think about it. Now, the next scene I want to talk about is from Attack on Titan, and this is with Erwin. And yes, this is his speech to his soldiers. So, to give you some context to this one, they're being attacked by the Beast Titan and a bunch of other Titans, and they need a way to basically get people out safely, and potentially even turn the tide and defeat the Beast Titan. So Erwin has this plan where him and his soldiers are going to run off and be a distraction for the Beast Titan, while Levi is going to go and kind of take him out, right? That's the plan. And so one of his soldiers is like, give it to us straight. Are we riding to our deaths here? And Erwin's like, yes, we are. And then the same soldier is like, well, if we're going to die regardless, whether we ride out or try to run away, like, we could just disobey your orders, right? We could just run away, and like, if it doesn't matter, then who cares? We could just disobey you. And Erwin's like, you're right. You could disobey me. You could completely disobey my orders, and I wouldn't be able to do a thing about it. But then he goes, what about our slain comrades, though? Were their lives meaningless?
They were not!
Their memories serve as an example to us all. The courageous fallen, the anguished fallen. Their lives have meaning because we, the living, refuse to forget them. And as we ride to certain death, we trust our successors to do the same for us. Because my soldiers do not buckle or yield when faced with the cruelty of this world. My soldiers push forward. My soldiers scream out. My soldiers rage. And I'm not going to lie to you, after seeing that scene, I think I was honestly inspired to ride out to my death as well. Like, in full honesty, I was more hyped after seeing that than Braveheart ever could have gotten me hyped for. Like, that was one of the most coldest scenes ever, with a speech that gives you chills just hearing it. On to my next one. This one might be one of the most intimidating ones out of all of these on the list, because it comes from a show that I am obsessed with and I probably talk way too much about, but regardless, it's one of my favorite shows, and it's called Eminence in Shadow. And the scene I'm talking about is where our main character, our main protagonist, Sid Kageno, also known as Shadow, of which in this scene he is donning the persona of Shadow, and he's fighting two of the strongest swordsmen in the entire series. He is fighting Beatrix, hailed as the War Goddess, and Iris Midgar, who is hailed as the strongest knight in all of the Midgar Kingdom and the princess of the Midgar Kingdom. He's fighting both of these people simultaneously throughout the town, and at one point in their fight, they end up on top of this bell tower, and it's kind of towards the end where Shadow is kind of just been dogging on them the entire time, and he has them exhausted on the ground, and they're both just kind of frustrated because he's just so much stronger than them. Iris particularly is incredibly frustrated and angry at him, and she goes, "All of the Midgar Kingdom is now your enemy. We will hunt you down till the ends of the earth. There's nowhere you can run." To which Shadow then begins cackling. Like a goddamn villain. He's just cackling. And then at some point, he composes himself, right? And as soon as he composes himself, both of them have these facial expressions like they're very confused that he was laughing in the first place. But he goes, "Run? Who's running? Running where? And why?" And as soon as he says why, his magic power just expands to the edges of the city. Now, Iris and Beatrix went from frustration and anger to then confusion to his laughing, and now that they see this and heard him say that, their facial expressions just turn to pure horror as they realize just how much stronger this man is than they've ever thought. And so they just become terrified. And he's not terrified at all. He's not scared of the whole kingdom coming after him. Why should he be? He could instantly destroy the entire thing, and it wouldn't matter. And so it's one of the coldest lines in my opinion. It honestly intimidated me a shit ton too. Like, I was sitting over there like, holy fuck, like, this guy's for real now, isn't he? Anyway, the last one I want to talk about is possibly one of my favorite lines in all of anime, from an anime that got me into anime. Obviously, the anime is Naruto. So for me, it comes from my favorite fight in the entire series, which is the Naruto versus Pain fight. Now, the reason that this is my favorite fight in the entire series is a lot of reasons, but namely, it involves one of my favorite characters in the entire series and probably my favorite villain in the entire series, Pain. Now, Pain has this whole speech to Naruto where he's talking about the cycle of hatred and how shinobi will never stop this cycle of hatred, because as one person takes vengeance on one person, then that person now wants to take vengeance on them, and it just creates this vicious cycle. And then he eventually asks Naruto, "Hey, how would you tackle the cycle of hatred? How would you deal with all of these things?" Naruto, in the most honest way possible, says, "I don't know." Pain's like, "Of course you don't know." Now, the line I want to actually talk about comes right after Hinata Hyuga shows up, tries to defend Naruto as he's lying on the ground, completely unable to fight back, right? So Hinata shows up and she's trying to fight back against Pain, protect Naruto, because, as she states in this scene, she loves Naruto. She expresses that openly to him. This is the first time that Naruto ever actually hears her say those words. Hears pretty much anybody say those words to him. And then Pain throws her in the air, drops her on the ground, and stabs her with a chakra rod, instantly killing her. Naruto is horrified by all of this, and Pain says that it was just like this when my parents were killed right before my eyes, by the shinobi of the hidden leaf. It is because of the existence of love that sacrifice is born, as well as hate. When one comprehends, one knows pain. Then Naruto transforms. You see this huge beam of dark red aura just coming out of the ground from him. This is like insane because none of us, even the viewers, have ever seen him transform like this before, right? And Sakura's over there, a character who has probably seen Naruto transform into the Nine Tails more than literally anybody else. And even she is like, what is that? She's never seen anything like this. Naruto is being swallowed up by hatred towards Pain for killing this woman that loved him and for destroying his village. And after this, Pain delivers one of the coldest lines in anime, and he goes, "Do you hate me now?" Basically nailing the final nail in the coffin and completely winning his philosophical debate with Naruto. Anyway, that'll do it for the coldest lines in anime. Thank you so much for watching. If I forgot to mention one that you really like, let me know down in the comments below, and I will try and include it into a future video. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Peace.